Just want to say, first of all, thanks to the great entertainment, representatives from across our district. Most of all but one actually were Wilson students. So we appreciate that. I know Dr. Roberts appreciates that as well. Well, So let me introduce you quickly, and then ladies and gentlemen, you may pick up your instruments and have a great evening. But Ann Wolf, Sean Fisher, Erica Milroney, Ellie Myers, Ashley Robinson, Stephanie Zinn, Joanne Shui, Danielle McKinney, Monica Basse, and Drew Harden are our representatives today. So thank you so much. And thanks to Ms. Gershak. What a wonderful job. Thank you, Rob.
Changes are going to be taking effect next August, and most of the teachers are going to leave by the end of May. So if we don't have this done by the end of May, there's lots of questions. You know, the other thing is how do we make the changes to make sure that nobody gets missed in the process. I have great concerns about that. And then the other thing is we do have great teachers in this district. And are we allocating enough resources to make sure that our teachers are given the resources to deliver the content in this new format the same way that they delivered the old content? Because to me, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I believe that in the past, they've done a wonderful job of delivering content into our community. And so I'm curious if all these changes are going to be able to be made properly such that our kids don't miss out, especially those kids that are right in the core in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're the ones who are going to feel the most effects of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next is Bill Teeter and John Schnetzer.
Yes, I'm Bill Teeter, and I bring with me tonight John Schnetzer. While we're both residents of the district, we're here representing the Newtown Business Association tonight, and we wanted to bring our thanks to the school board and to Dr. Jackson, but in particular to your principal at Mercer Elementary, Scott Gates. Scott did an outstanding job in helping us organize the entire Winterfest, particularly the kids area. He organized all the teacher volunteers to come down and help, organized all the choirs and singing that went on. The event could never, and I mean never, have happened without Scott's involvement, and he should be richly thanked, but he's not allowed to retire.
Well, thank you. Next up, district update from the superintendent for the love of learning.
Yes, for the love of learning. I'd like to introduce Dee Stone, and along with her, we have some representatives that will speak on the topic, or at least be with her as well. Representatives Gary Conway, and whom else do we have?
Jane Sunderhouse.
Jane Sunderhouse. Is Jane here? Oh, there you are, Jane.
Aaron Sheddock.
And Aaron, okay. So, Dee?
Sorry.
Cesar. Thank you. Dee?
Good evening. We're here to talk just briefly this evening about a new program that the Forest Hills Foundation for Education is rolling out to all the employees in the district. And it's our For the Love of Learning program. And what it is, it's a program where we're asking all employees in the district, administrators, staff at every building to make a contribution to the foundation. We're asking for 100% participation rather than a particular amount. And what this will do is fund the programming that we already do. Some of that programming, as many of you are familiar with, is our Access 24/7 program, which is our after-school tutoring at all 9 Forest Hill schools. We do it 2 days a week at Nagel, 2 days a week at both high schools, and then there's an intervention piece and an enrichment piece at the elementary schools. We are also have stepped up to support the Power Up Equity program throughout the district. These are a couple of things that we do right now, and this program, for the Love of Learning program, will help us fund those programs. So we're rolling it out. Just this month, we're going to be speaking at all these schools. We've already hit a couple of them. I have one tomorrow and another one this week. But we couldn't have done it without the support of the Forest Hills Teachers Association. Donna Lawler couldn't be with us tonight, and she and Tammy both have worked very, very hard with the foundation making this program happen, and then with Gary and Jane and
I'm just honest
And-
representative.
So anyway, they've all, Gary helped connect us with the bus drivers, and James helped connect us with the paraprofessionals. So, everybody hopefully is getting behind this program. We're really excited because the board of the foundation, we have stepped up financially to support the foundation. We have 100% commitment from our board. We're asking this board and the employees of the district too, before we roll it out to the general public. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's too late now. It is. Go ahead.
Executive privilege.
Okay. We had a late comer, and since I went to school with her a long time ago, but no, I will reopen public comments from Michelle Ferguson. Oh, you're welcome.
Hi, my name is Michelle Ferguson. I have 2 children that attend Wilson Elementary. I'm here to address my concerns regarding safety and security for schools. Since the Sandy Hook Elementary massacre, security and safety has been addressed and discussed in the media. Locally, several school districts are reviewing their safety and security plans, procedures, and making appropriate changes. They are looking at lessons learned from the massacre. Fairfield District has been sending emails regularly to the parents regarding updates to their safety and security protocols. I am asking for better communication from our district to the parents about what is being done at Forest Hill. Are safety plans being reviewed? May the parents view the safety plans? Will law enforcement be present in our schools? I have a list of concerns and actions for the board and some emails from the media of other districts in the city of what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. If you leave this for Randy, I'll make sure he gets it. If you,
Yeah, I've got it. I think I got an extra one.
I'll make sure.
I've got it.
Thank you.
All right, moving to 8.2, Steering Committee Facilities Report. Dr. Jackson?
Yes, and I think it's very apropos for your comments. We really appreciate that. And let me just start by talking about, and actually this presentation is going to talk a lot about safety and security. Early on, that's not just since December 14th. We've been looking at the safety and security and all of our plans within the district. In particular, however, we have a safety committee that meets several times a year in our district, and of which a couple of our board members on it, many of our administrators, parents, and we address issues that come up in regards to security. Since the Sandy Hook incident on December 14th, we have taken a look at all of our safety and security plans that we do have, and unfortunately, we will not share them specifically, but we do have them for all of our buildings. Actually, myself and our safety coordinator, Mr. Johnson, our business director, have visited all of our buildings. We have begun to make some changes in regards to making sure that we are more secure than we have in the past. I do want to congratulate the Forest Hill Schools for the efforts pre-planning that we have already done and we continue to do. But there's always some more things we can do, and that's part of the plan that I'm going to be sharing tonight. So thank you very much for those comments. Now, I apologize, I did send out one message, but you're right, we need to continue to send out messages to our community and to our parents. So thank you so much. I would like to review a little bit of the presentation that was presented at our last board meeting regarding the facilities master plan that the board has had in front of them now for over a month, and will be making some decisions this evening. To begin with, let's kind of very quickly review the fact that there was a steering committee that was put together. And that steering committee, as long as some consultants and I have been meeting for quite some time now to get this plan together. One of the roles that was asked of me when becoming superintendent was, of course, to design a strategic plan for the district, which we did and was adopted last February. And of that strategic plan, actually, one of the goals, one of the 5 was specifically on facilities. There were 2 key initiatives, and the next slide will show that our key initiatives were address those facilities infrastructures for optimizing our learning spaces and also the plan for our future learning environments. So what was the process? As I just mentioned, the steering committee met. We looked at previous plans that had been presented and worked on over the last several years through the Board of Education. We toured the buildings. We consulted with our consultants that have done some extensive work in our buildings. Mr. Johnson helped us with a lot of the work that we needed to do. And with that, we then put together this plan and we presented it to the Board of Education. To begin with, the steering committee did come up with some critical findings right off the bat. And number 1, as we just discussed, was the need for citizen spirit modification at all levels. Very important point. We had this plan long before the Sandy Hook, but that's okay. It just brings it to everyone's attention. The second point, key point that we that was a key finding was simply the need to optimize all of our learning environments for today as well as in the future. And the third was to make sure that all of our buildings, and this was kind of even a revelation to myself, that all of our buildings were accessible to all of our students, all of our staff, and our community. One other thing that the committee did discover, which we knew as internally, but we are building envelopes. In other words, the structures of all of our buildings are very strong. Those envelopes meaning our walls, our roofing structures, what we've done to take care of all of our facilities over the last several years, thanks to the direction of our Board of Education. And we even mentioned the fact, I think, Forest Heights Esquire was here just a few minutes ago. He's still not here in our audience. He actually, several years ago, put together a plan that helped to keep our buildings strong and optimal over the past several years. So, back up. There we go. So, the findings also, just to show you, there was one more slide that I added here, and this is prior to going on break over the Christmas. In fact, early in December, I put out a survey to our community. It was a 7-question survey. Now, most of those questions dealt with what our community perceived as the strengths of the Forest Hill School System. And I did slide a question in on our facility. And what this shows in a nutshell is that I believe that our community, there were 585 surveys that were returned. Majority of them, of course, were from our parents and some from our staff. So it was some people that knew our buildings primarily. But the number 1 response when it came to the question, what do you believe are the most important aspects of school facilities, it came down to providing the optimal learning environments. And that was approximately 27% of the surveys. The number 2 item that our community and our group reported back in the survey was the overall safety and security of 25% of our community. They wanted us to make sure that was key and vital part of our facilities. So I wanted to share this with the board, and actually that survey is online, all 7 of those questions and the results online, and I will be providing that to the Board of Education if you've not had an opportunity to take a peek at that. So moving on, our steering committee also came up with some critical assumptions. And quite frankly, over the last several years, it's played quite a key part of this. And number 1 assumption was that our community was not in support primarily of changing our configuration of our building. So no change in building configurations. In other words, we were to maintain the thought of an assumption of maintaining our 2 high schools, our middle school, and our 6 elementary schools. The second critical assumption was that we're going to maintain the thought of our whole neighborhood schools without changing any grade level configurations. People are very pleased with our 6 elementary schools, our pre-K through 6th grade buildings. And one thing that we did discover, and there was a data report that just came out to the Board of Education, and that talks about our student enrollments and what's happened over the past several years. And quite frankly, if you look at the last 10 to 12 years and look at what might be happening in the future, we see no real significant change in our enrollment in the near future, or even as we look out into the long run. And finally, one of the things I think was key was that any facilities plan that we were to provide to the Board of Education, it must be a needs-based plan. What are our needs? How do we begin to address those needs? Secondly, it must be a long-term plan, something that we just don't put a Band-Aid on today, that we fix it and it'll be fixed for a long while. And lastly, at the same time, it must be cost-effective to our community. So those are the assumptions. Then as we move on, again, we looked through the lens of number one, safety and security of all of our students, accessibility for all of our students, staff, and community, and the third is to make sure that our learning environments were optimized to the best that we can do. Last month, I presented each building. We talked about these. I'll briefly go over those again, but each of our buildings has some unique needs. Some of them are similar throughout the district. So number one is you'll see probably a common theme of all of those is safety and security. At Anderson High School, you really need to take a look at our security vestibules, how our entryway and improvements to accomplish some secure entrance for our visitors to our building. We also need to look at Anderson at our ADA for our accessibility for all staff. There are many areas at Anderson High School that if you are at a handicapped nature that you cannot get to. So we talked about some of those things, whether it be on the second floor, or whether it be over in the music wing, or whether it be in some of our athletic areas. It's very difficult, so you can't, quite frankly, get to those areas. One key part of our learning environment that is a major need in our district, as you'll see across, is the whole idea of our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. In this case at Anderson, it's quite frankly a cooling system at Anderson. There are so many days throughout the year when frankly learning is just not occurring from an optimal standpoint because of the unregulated temperatures. At the same time, when it's hot, we have a lot of doors that are open. As much as we close them, somebody comes along and pops them back open. So part of that is also a huge safety issue for our kids. Moving along, we need to take a look at the electric system and do some improvements there at Anderson, as well as some roof replacements and some whole site circulation. Now, we're going to talk about safety. Visit Anderson early in the morning when school is taking up, and you'll see that forest roads sometimes can come to almost a standstill, where we have students coming in, we have parents dropping kids off, and buses coming in and out at the same time, as well as our staff and walkers. We need to address those issues. So, quite frankly, Anderson High School, those are the key areas, along with some others, but those are the keys that I wanted to share with you in the Board of Education. We'll move on quickly to Turpin. Turpin, again, security, safety, making sure that we, those doors, we have a vestibule there so that we can intercept any people that are coming to visit, and making sure that we ask why they're there, what's in regards to knowing who's in our building. We also need to look at the ADA accessibility at Turpin as well as I just mentioned at Anderson. The HVAC, yes, we do have air conditioning at Turpin, but we also know that we can provide some efficiencies. It takes a little bit of money to provide those efficiencies so that it'll save the district money in the long run. And then, quite frankly, at Turpin, although on the outside Turpin it does look very nice for its building, and we've done a wonderful job there. The classroom configurations, there's some significant need there in regards to some of the pie-shaped classrooms, walking through one classroom to get to another classroom, or locker bays that we turn into classroom, and vice versa, and on and on and on, as well as the circulation of all the 1,200 plus kids that are moving around in that building. So, Turpin, let's move on to Nagel. Nagel, our nicest, newest building in the district. However, there are some areas of it we need to address. Number one, door access control and safety again. ADA accessibility in certain areas of Nagel as well. HVAC efficiencies again. Natasha and I just had a discussion about that most recently about some of the work that still needs to occur to make sure that those chillers are more efficient there and save our communities learning. And actually, if you look at Nagel, and I did share this afternoon, I had a meeting in Nagel this afternoon, and unfortunately I got tied up in the traffic on Nagel Avenue. And it took me and Sheila about 10 to 15 minutes to get her into the building because of the traffic and the tie-up. We need to address those. Again, we saw students, buses, parents, and even administrators trying to get in and out of that building. And we need to address those things. Moving on, we have 6 elementary schools. Air and Sherwood are almost identical buildings, so we'll talk a little bit about Air, and we'll get to Sherwood, I'll go, But when you look at Air and Sherwood, we take a look at the security and the safety there as well, to make sure that there's a security vestibule in place. And so again, fire alarm improvements, ADA accessibilities, especially when it comes to some of the restroom modifications and things that need to occur. And some interior renovations, not renovations. Interior renovations in both those buildings. They're both open classrooms, which is facilities, which is phenomenal, and our staff does a wonderful job at each of those buildings. But at the same time, there are some areas that we need to address in those buildings as well. And quite frankly, across all of our elementaries, we have the technology infrastructure that we need to address. We have addressed it at the high schools and the middle school, and now we need to move that down to the elementary levels and make sure that all of our classrooms are wireless accessible to all our students and our staff, because technology is most definitely a way of life. Moving on. Maddox Elementary. Maddox, same kind of things. Door access, security improvements at Maddox Elementary. ADA accessibility, especially into the lower levels. HVAC, Maddox is another. Several days in the spring and several days in the fall. Maddox has a modular unit where we have students that are housed in 2 classrooms. We need to move those kids in. We also need to build a couple classrooms so we can do that. Again, discover roof replacement, site access improvements. It's like a game of, almost a game of chicken when the buses and cars are coming in and out in the morning and the afternoon because of the narrow access coming into Maddox Elementary. Roof replacements, that site access improvements, and again, technology infrastructure. Mercer Elementary. Mercer, again, security vestibule. The second picture is a nice stairwell. That picture was taken from the front entrance. When you walk into there, when you have a choice. You can go up and all over the building, or as a visitor, you can go down and make a right-hand turn and go to the office and report. Okay? We need to address that. Window replacement. Many of our buildings, we've done that already, where we really kept up with the window replacements and put very efficient windows and those types of things. But just like Turpin, although I didn't mention there, well, we do have some windows that we really need to address in Turpin. Mercer is another building where we really do need to go through and do some work there, again, for energy efficiencies, as well as interior renovations and technology infrastructure again. Okay. Sherwood, ditto. Air, very much the same structure, and the same thing with the next building. Summit Elementary. Summit, again, the same issues with the door access security, and we need to do some lobby modifications at Summit. ADA accessibility, you can't get to the second floor if you are a handicapped child, because we have no elevator or any type of lift system, and there's no way to put a lift system in there efficiently. Window replacement again at Summit. HVAC, again, another building that is not cooled, only very small portions of that building, and our technology infrastructure. Wilson Elementary. Quite frankly, there are some areas of Wilson that we've done a very good job maintaining and keeping up. But even if you go to the very bottom bullet there, even as early as 2004, when the facilities, Ohio School Facilities Commission came in and assessed all of our buildings, they at the time said that to renovate Wilson at the time was 93% the cost of building new. Okay, that was 9 years ago. I wonder what it is now. Well, I do know what it is now. The cost of renovating would exceed the cost of building new. And again, we have 3 modulars outside of Wilson Elementary, where we have several classrooms there as well that we need to address the safety and security. We have a lot of open spaces. We have, part of our renovations to our east side renovations, as far as our most recent tours of Wilson, we are working on some significant changes with Wilson, even for the short term. Okay, so our recommendation there is basically a replacement of that building. Okay. Okay. What I did is I broke down the whole facilities plan into a graph, to a pie graph, and I'm sorry if this isn't very clear, but let me explain that to you. The entire cost of the project, Wilson Elementary would be about 31% of that particular cost of the entire project. So if you look at that, then of the safety and security areas, at a minimum of 14%. Preventive maintenance, about 7% across the district. ADA accessibility is about 2.25% of the entire project, and our enhanced learning environments across the district for Wilson included is 45% of the project. Okay? But let's take Wilson out for a moment. I think it's pretty sensible that we need to do something with Wilson. But if we pull Wilson out of the picture, it's okay. In and of itself, we have a lot of issues that we need to address at Wilson by replacing it, and we take a look at the rest of the projects. Now how it's in percentage broken down. Learning environments would be, in that particular case, 66% of the remaining amount of need. Safety and security is over 21%. The preventive maintenance of this package, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, is over 10.5%. And the ADA accessibility for our students now in this whole package is 3.5%. Although it's a need across the district, it's a smaller need, but we really do have to address that. So I put those two graphs in for the board's pleasure and for you here tonight. Next slide, please. The board asked our treasurer, Rick Pepper, and myself at the last board meeting to go to our county auditor and ask what would the project totality equate to in mills. We have done that, and these are the three options that the board asked us to explore. A $43 million option, a $45 million option, and a $47 million option. Why did the board choose those three? My presentation to the board from last month was a minimum of $45 million. It was a very tight estimate. It was very little in regards to any contingencies built in. The board asked also to look at a little less, and also then just a little more of the 47. So to the Board of Education, I provided these to you earlier, but $43 million ask would be approximately 1.7 mils, $45 million ask 1.78 mils, and a $47 million ask, I believe, Rick, is 1.86 mils. Am I correct? So we're off 100 mil. Apologies, my finger slipped. But the dollars on the other side are correct. If we were to go to our community and ask them to help us with our capital needs of the district, the $43 million ask would equate to a $100,000 value of a home to be $51.26. A $45 million ask would be $367, and a $47 million ask about $2.50 more, something like that, at 56 or like.
And just to be clear, it's market value home, so from a market value.
Yes, that's market. Thank you. Next slide. So with that, let me sum it up. The comprehensive facilities plan that I presented last board meeting and again reviewed today, basically is take a look at our critical capital needs of our district. At that time, and even today, I presented a plan that would have a cost of $45 million. That $45 million, as I said, was tight, leaving very little room for any inflationary changes that could occur because this project, if approved, are going to take approximately 3 years or so to complete. At the same time, when you are renovating structures, it's not like building new. You never know sometimes what you get into when you take something apart and you put it back together. The $47 million figure would provide some additional dollars for safety and security in particular. Since December 14th, we've spent a great deal of time looking at safety and security, and we truly believe that even above what we'd already proposed in the original document, that there are some areas, especially when it comes to internal compliance, with regards to some more things that we can do inside of our building, that we can definitely use a little extra revenue in that regard. But in particular as well, that, as I said, would give us some room for some of the unknowns that might come along through our project. Second bullet, the completion of this proposed comprehensive facilities plan will extend the design life of our school buildings for a number of years, for well into the future. In fact, unless there are some significant changes that would occur in the future, our 9 buildings, the new Wilson or whatever, the new elementary, and the modifications to the rest of those buildings, and bring those buildings up to what's called nearly a new design life. Design lives for a building can go anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50 years. Okay? Now, as we move on, this plan, and I haven't talked about it too much because we are moving some of the already budgeted monies in our current 5-year forecast that we have to have budgeted for these maintenance improvements of our buildings. We push those over into the facilities plan for the next 5 years or so. What this will do is it'll extend the operating life of our current operating levies that we just passed last year. So when we passed that needs-based operating levy last March of 3.9 mils, we said at the time our goal was to make sure that levy lasted at least 3 years before our asking come back to our community for additional revenue. This will increase that to 4 years plus. Not 5 yet, but it puts that as a target out there that we could work towards, was maybe not being back to our community for 4 to 5 years in the future rather than 3. We still need to address, as we move forward, maintaining our facilities. And then finally, our last bullet, or second to last bullet, or actually the last bullet, the implementation of this particular plan does fulfill the vision of our facilities and does support the success for our students. Will we have Mason-like buildings out there? No. But we will have very functional, very useful buildings for our students and our staff. They'll be renovated. They'll be, our learning environments will be updated. And we truly believe this will take us a long way down the road. So with that, I will ask the board if they have any other questions. Randy, you can take him off mute now. Hey, thank you, Randy. Okay. Any questions from the board?
Randy? Okay. Randy?
You heard us.
Dr. Eisen? Anything?
I don't have any questions, no.
We heard what the 40, so for the larger amount, oh, I guess they wanted to hear the presentation.
Are we at the discussion? Is that
Or
where we're at?
discussion, yes.
I've got plenty to discuss.
Okay, well,
You know, I think when we were at the last meeting trying to determine what to send Rick to the treasurer for, we talked about it as being, should we go have him talk about 40, 45, or 50? And we squeezed the numbers together a little bit, went with 43, 45, and 47. And then what we got, in addition to the presentation, Dallas, you provided to us last time, is you shared with us the very detailed project list by building. And, you know, I've gone through the numbers, and the total is actually slightly over $45 million. And I have never seen a project that comes in on budget. We just did our kitchen, and we're over by more than this. I would be in favor of the 1.86 mils, or the $47 million, to make sure we finish what we started and we don't go into operating dollars to finish.
Agreed, because if something comes up along the way, I don't want to not be able to finish a certain project at a different school because there was a surprise here. I'd rather be safe and have that 47 mil, so I agree with you for that, Jim.
Yeah, it's an 800th of a mil. It's about $2.50 per 100,000.
well, yeah, I feel the same way. I think we are being conservative throughout in this presentation. We've had other ideas over the last couple of years and even going back 10 years. some of which were far grander on scheme than this. So I think as we're looking at a needs-based presentation, to have that a little extra to, if need be, to, again, right now, safety and security are the key words and the key concerns with all of our buildings, is to not shortchange that.
Forrest?
Yes.
I would agree with that. I think this entire plan overall is conservative, and so I don't want to get hung up in, although $2 million is a lot of money, but at this point, it's probably the right thing to do, especially given the need to make absolutely positively sure that we do have all the safety and security needs of the district incorporated into this plan. We don't want to find out later that, gee, we should have spent just a little more, and if something, tragic would have happened in our district.
Julie?
Well, I've given this a lot of thought, as you might all imagine. So my comments are said with the utmost respect for you all, because I think that we have a great board right now. My respect for Dallas is there as well. But I've struggled with this plan since it was presented to us. I think the first time I heard about it, I want to say, was early December or late November, when we had individual meetings with the superintendent, and then it was presented to us as a whole in December, and here we are in January voting on it, which is a really short time frame. So if you'll bear with me, I wrote my thoughts, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything out. So if now is the appropriate time, I'd like to present them to you all with that backdrop. During my time on the board, and this is the 9th year for my service, there have been 4 facility studies. I was on committees for 3 of those 4 studies, and I believe Tracy was on 1 or 2 way back when. This is the only time I haven't sat on the committee, and I have to tell you that every time a committee was ready to make a recommendation, the process has come to a halt. I wouldn't say a screeching halt, but a halt at the board level. And I don't know if it's because, as a whole, we're a conservative group. We live in a conservative community. We love our schools and our school district the way it is, or change in moving forward is really, really, really hard work. Could be part or all of those things. But now the board has a plan before it that has even gone so far as to ask the treasurer to report on various millage amounts tonight. The one thing I remember saying in December, and it holds true for me today, is I'm very proud of this board and very encouraged that this board is now talking about facilities as a whole. We're actually having a discussion. Based on my experience with the committees and my knowledge of the multiple facility studies over the years, and the study of our current plan, including asking questions of the superintendent, the treasurer, the director of business operations, board members, community people, and responses that I've received, and truly a lot of soul searching. And this is probably the only issue I can think I've done this much soul searching on since I've been on the board was when we did the code of conduct way back when, I think was on my first year as a board member. So with all that backdrop, I have reservations about the current plan, and I'd just like to go into them if I can. First of all is the rapidness of the plan, the presentation before us. Again, I have probably been pushing as much or more than anyone on the board for a plan. I mean, Dallas, I wouldn't say I've dogged him, but it's when we hired him, we were on this, we did the superintendent search. One of the things we asked Dallas to do was do a facilities plan for us. And I've reminded him of it over and over again. And I've been pushing the board also to have a meaningful discussion about facilities, whatever that discussion is, but a probing, thoughtful, well-vetted discussion. Every previous study was exhaustive. We had extensive materials given to us to review. Various recommendations were made. Sometimes it was a single recommendation, sometimes there were alternatives to consider. The 06 study was a conservative study, not unlike this study. A new Wilson and various other enhancements to the other buildings. The last study was a more expansive options, sort of thinking outside the proverbial box study. So we've had all kinds of studies. We received this recommendation as a board in December. We had a short discussion thereafter. Tonight, we as a board did. Tonight, 1 month later, we will be considering action to put a bond issue on the May ballot. So with less than 2 months to actually consider this proposal, that's a concern to me. Second issue is there was no consideration or mention of the Ohio School Facilities Commission report from 2005, other than Wilson was at 93%. But guys, here's the study. It's 2 binders. It's extensive. I did not look at it, even with the committees that I've been on, as extensively as I did in preparing for my remarks. And I have to tell you that the OSFC is an independent organization that came in and studied Forest Hills facility for several months and spent extensive time and effort reviewing and assessing. And this was back in '05. The OSFC is a non-district body taking a look at our facilities. There are 3, if you'll bear with me again, there are 3 short summaries I'd like to read to you from that study. First of all, the participants page indicates how objective it is. The participants were an assessment consultant named Freitag and Associates, who was from, at the time, Sydney, Ohio, an educational planner, DeJong and Associates from Dublin, Ohio, and a regional program consultant called Resource International from Columbus, Ohio. So the participants were objective, and I don't mean that we can't be objective in this district, but we all have a personal interest in what happens, and we should. I mean, we all love this district. We wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be in this room, you wouldn't be hearing me rambling on and on about this. But it was a totally objective look. So the scope of the project, again, bear with me, I have 6 paragraphs to read out of this book and then I'll be done with it. The scope of the work for Forest Hills School District includes the assessment report as required by the Ohio School Facilities Commission. The district provided a completed copy of the school district assessment questionnaire completed May 11, 2004. DeJong and Associates has completed an enrollment study dated June 2004. The information provides documentation of improvements that have been completed since the 1990 Ohio Public School Facility Survey. Having met with the district, Freitag and Associates, Inc. performed an assessment of all 9 schools in the district. The assessment consisted of a walkthrough of each building with maintenance personnel from the district offices. The assessment report contains the following for each school in the district. Each school, that's why these binders are so thick. A general description of the school assessment, a copy of the 1990 Ohio Public School Facility Survey, Ohio Public School June 2005 report, existing floor plan, thumbnail sketch, and completed guide for the school facility appraisal. The report also includes a map that shows the location of each school in the district. Listen to this part. As part of the facility assessment program, the report includes an initial master plan for Forest Hills local school district addressing the long-term approach to the district's K-12 facilities. Included as part of this initial master plan is a summary of the district's existing facilities, a proposed master plan, and an estimated state versus local funding calculation sheet based on the total cost of the master plan and information provided by the district. All right, so the scope of the project is obviously extensive. The third thing I wanted to read from this binder to you is the master plan summary. And then I'll be done with this part. Master plan summary. Forest Hills Local School District currently utilizes 9 school buildings for its educational needs. Resource International, Inc. has reviewed the 10-year enrollment projections developed by DeJong and Associates and the facilities assessment reports created by Freitag and Associates, Inc. Of the 9 facilities in the district, the assessment, again, listen to this part, the assessment resulted in 3 buildings being designated with a renovation versus rebuild percentage that exceeds the 66% required to consider renovation. In considering the district's long-term housing of projected future PK through 12 student populations, these 3 structures are recommended for abandonment. Again, if you get to 2/3 or more for renovation costs, the recommendation from them is don't renovate, rebuild. And we had 3 schools back in 2005 that were in that category. The historical enrollment data provided by the district indicated enrollment decreasing over the past 10 years. The 10-year enrollment projections indicate an additional 6.6% decrease in the district's PK through 12 enrollment from the 2004-05 through the 2013-14 school year, with the peak enrollment being 7,414 PK through 12 students in the 2005-2006 academic year. We haven't decreased enrollment, we've increased enrollment, and what that means is the need is even greater than when this report was written. Finally, Forest Hills Local School District applied to the Expedited Local Partnership Program. Again, we asked them to come in as an assessment-only district. This level of involvement with the program calls for the development of a single conceptual approach to master planning based on a standard PK through K /6 through 8 /9 through 12 grade configuration. In the case of Forest Hills local schools, and this is important because we do tend to love the configuration that we have. The district's current grade configuration is PK through 6 /7 through 8 /9 through 12. Utilizing the aforementioned 10-year enrollment projections and facilities assessment reports, Resource International, Inc. has developed the following initial master plan option displaying PK through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12 grade configuration, and for comparison purposes, and because we love our grade configurations, has also prepared an option based on the district's existing grade configuration. So they did 2 master plans for us, all right? So the master plan summary, in my opinion, if you look through this, this is the summary, but they go through each school for the rest of this binder and a whole additional binder. And to me, if you look through this, it's humbling. It's actually humbling what they did. So, going back to this percentage that their benchmark percentage of renovation versus rebuilding, we had Air at 57%, Maddox at 67%, Mercer at 53%, Summit at 69%, Wilson at 93%, Nagel at 8%, Anderson at 58%, Turpin at 30%. So the 3 schools that they determined at the time in 2005 were no longer viable for renovation were Maddox and Summit and Wilson. And they did not talk about air conditioning. Air conditioning had nothing to do with it, all right? So it's the building and it's our learning environments and it's our structures, not air conditioning, which is a big part of the money we're going to put into our learning environments. So again, 9 years ago, 3 schools, they recommended that we redo them completely, new buildings. Again, I came on the board a little over 8 years ago, and I don't recall ever discussing at the board level or in any of the facilities committees the extent of this report. It's mentioned and referenced in our various facilities committee reports, sometimes more than others. But again, I don't recall a board-level discussion ever about it. The third issue that I have is the useful life. And for me, this is probably the biggest hurdle I have in accepting this facilities plan. There's been a representation that by doing all that is proposed to do, we are going to increase the useful life of our buildings. I've heard different amounts. First time I heard, I think 30 years, 35. Tonight I heard 40 to 50. The plan projects I'm going to go with additional 35 to 40 years because that's what I first heard, additional useful life for all of our buildings. Now, keep in mind, the expected life of an educational facility is 45 to 50 years. Wilson was built in 1959, 1 year after I was born. It's 54 years old right now. The proposal for Wilson is to fully replace it. Every facilities plan I've been involved in, everybody agrees Wilson needs to be replaced. So Wilson's solid. I believe Wilson should be replaced. I think everybody, with the exception of maybe a slight few, agree. But to look only at Wilson is extremely short-sighted in my opinion. For example, I'm going to give you Anderson as an example, not only because my children have gone and go there, and I'm familiar with it because I'm in the building a lot, but also because it is the next oldest building. It was built in 1961, just 2 years younger than Wilson. It's 52 years old, a little younger than I am. It's already past its useful life, according to the figure I gave you earlier. In 35 years, after its second useful life, we are talking about an 87 to 92-year-old building. 87 to 92-year-old building. And all I can say to that is really, I mean, really? The primary expenditure for Anderson High School is air conditioning. Everybody that has been in Anderson knows it needs air conditioning, but if we're talking about, you know, it helping maybe 6 weeks a year. The other things that are slated for Anderson are some safety, security, accessibility, pool and science class upgrades. Again, I'm in Anderson more than any other buildings. I can't even begin to think what this building would be like at the age of 87 to 92. And I'll give you a sort of an anecdotal example. I was in one of the art classes randomly. I've never been in an art class. My kids aren't artists. But I was in an art class, I think it was the week before last, helping a group with a project. The art class just happens to be in the science wing. There are a number of lockers along one side of the wall for art supplies. And the lockers were, a lot of them were hanging on hinges, beat up, it just looked really rough. The window screens were out of the windows, the blinds in the windows were all askew, the shelves were all beat up, and again, I can't imagine what this building's going to look like in 87 to 92 years. It reminded me of a really hard-used urban school, how a hard-used urban school would look. Now, with all due respect to Ray and his folks and other people that have worked on facilities over the years, our facilities look great when you're driving down the street. There's no question. We've maintained our facilities as best we can. But if you walk in the building and go through the buildings and really look hard, they're not in that great a shape. Our family was at Elder High School this weekend. Elder High School, the main part of Elder High School was built in 1922. Old. That was the year my parents were born. But Elder is a well-built, solid, aesthetically pleasing building. The interior looks better than ours. They have somehow, maybe through private donations, I'm not sure how, managed to have that really old building look better than ours. They have new windows, they have new ceilings, they have new electricity, they have new wood cabinets. The lockers actually work. They're all, it looks a lot better. Our Anderson was built in 1961, 60s style construction. A lot of our district was built in the 60s and 70s. Construction was different. It was way different. So when people compare the age of their homes to schools and say, well, I live in an 80-year-old home, so you know, what's good for me will be good for the school district, it's a different use. It's a completely different use. So to me, it's apples and oranges. Other buildings in 35 to 40 years. Maddox was built in 66. It's 47 years old. 35 to 40 years, it'll be 82 to 87 years old. Summit is currently 45 years old. It'll be 80 to 85. Sherwood is 43. It'll be 78 to 83. Air is 40, as is Mercer. In 35 to 40 years, they'll be 75 or 80 years old. Turpin is 37 years old. 35 to 40 years, it'll be 72 to 77 years old. And finally, Nagel is 14 right now. It's our teenage school. It'll be 49 to 54 years old in 35 to 40 years. So at the end of this 35 to 40 years, what are we going to have? We're going to have 7 really, really, really old buildings. One school, which is Nagel, that'll be the age of our current building, so it'll be done with its useful life. And we'll have Wilson, which will be 33 to 38 years old, assuming that it takes 2 years to build it, or 3 years to build it. It'll be the same age as Turpin is right now. So again, the useful life to me is of concern, because I think it'll be really hard for us to go back to the taxpayers at some point when we need to make more improvements without them saying, but you promised us a whole additional useful life. The improvements don't go far enough. Some improvements will be welcomed by some, if not many. Air conditioning in Anderson, Maddox and Summit. People will like that. 2 classrooms in Maddox. Maddox will like that. But what about the rest of the interior learning environments? There's no provision for any enhancements. I shouldn't say any, just minor enhancements. Focuses on security, accessibility. That's all good. We should do that. But then we have roofs, and things that are sort of normal routine maintenance items. And I appreciate that the plan includes putting all major sort of anticipated fix-it items that are projected for the next 5 years into the plan. We can get an additional year from the levy, potentially, by doing that. But again, at the end of that 5 years, where do we get the money to fix our continually aging facilities? The 5th tenet of the district's strategic plan, we did a strategic plan last year, worked really hard on it. Dallas and his team worked really hard on it. Principals worked hard on it. Board worked hard on it. We all worked hard on it. And that was another thing we hired Dallas to do, was get us a strategic plan, have us be better planners. The 5th tenet of the district's strategic plan says, establish Forest Hills as the district of choice in Southwest Ohio for students, families, staff, and community. And number 3 of the facilities report says, again, there are 3 areas of focus for this facilities plan: safety and security, accessibility, and the 3rd one is to optimize the learning environment. I just don't think through this plan that we are being true to our strategic plan of having Forest Hills as a district of choice, nor do I think that we're optimizing our learning environments. We're making them better, no question, but we're not optimizing them. Again, with 2 kids in Forest Hills, our older son's sort of more of a sports kid, and our younger son is more of a theater choral kid. So I've seen a lot of schools, a lot of different aspects of schools, been in a lot of schools, and really, we are falling further and further behind other schools. There's only one other school that I can think of offhand that I've seen that to me looks in worse shape than some of the really rough parts of Anderson High School. An alternate approach for this board could be to look at this Ohio facilities report, look at all the deficiencies that are in our buildings harder, and any additional things that have happened in the last, since this report was written. Again, this report's 9 years old. Keep our current building configuration and make enhancements in a cost-effective manner. I think it's a big job, but I think we can do it. I do. In conclusion, I'm not from here originally. I didn't grow up here. But I've lived here since 1994, 19 years. Our family is invested in this district. My husband did go here. Bless him. He went to Anderson High School, Maddox Elementary when it was a brand new school. And our kids went here. So we're deeply committed to this district. A lot of people have gone to school here. and they stay here. And their children go to school here. I used to make fun of continually running into people my husband went to high school with. Don't you guys ever leave here? Well, they don't, and we don't. And we don't want to, and we won't. But a lot of people have done this, where they've gone to school, and their children have either stayed here or gone off to school and returned to raise their families here. Forrest is an example. Tracy is an example. Randy on the phone is an example. And again, my husband is an example. And I think about our kids, your 4 kids, Jim's kids, Tracy's little kids, Randy's older kids, and my sort of middle-aged kids. And I think, would our children with this plan want to come back and raise their kids in Forest Hills? That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that absolutely deserves some sort of response, Julie. I was on this last committee, and I can assure you that nothing was done with any rapidity. There was a lot of thought, there was a lot of consideration, and we had the advantage of all the work that was done before us. We started with those binders, we started with the work done by the prior committees, and we didn't need to spend years reviewing that. We also had, as Dallas's PowerPoint reviewed, we had the advantage of the critical assumptions that we were able to start with because of all the work done by the prior committees. We knew that the community didn't want to change the building configuration. They wanted the 2 high schools, they wanted 1 middle school and the 6 elementaries. They didn't want to change the grade level configuration. You referenced the population, the enrollment in the schools. No significant change in the foreseeable future, and we've seen the studies. We've got one here this evening. It's consistent with everything that we've been looking at. And then most significantly, the facility plan has to be needs-based, long-term, and cost-effective. Wilson itself is a $14 million fix. And what you're talking about is at least 3 schools that need to be replaced. Assuming they're all comparably cost as is Wilson, we're at $45 million before we've touched any of the other buildings. Look, if I thought that the community would support 9 new buildings, or maybe 8, because Nagel is still relatively new, well then we'd be happy to build 8 or 9 new buildings. It's not only not practical, it's not possible. What we have to do is we have to address the needs of the school district within our financial means. And this is a pretty good plan that gets us there and maintains the current configuration. The only other way to do it cost effectively is to change the building configuration, and not just a little, but a lot. And that wasn't our starting point. You know, I really appreciate the thought and effort that you've put into this, Julie, and I know your heart's in the right place. So is mine, and so is the rest of the board. And I absolutely believe that the plan that was presented tonight is the right one for the district, and I'm going to support it.
I think Jim almost said exactly one of the thoughts I wrote down when Julie was talking about if money weren't an issue, I would love to have all new buildings. I think everyone in this room would. I don't think that's, debatable at all, but I think it's going to be hard enough to pass a 1.86 or whatever bond in Forest Hills. We have a very conservative community. They don't want new taxes, even if it is $51, a year. So I like the idea of doing new buildings all around, especially the 3 that Julie mentioned, but I just don't think it's realistic in Forest Hills at this time. So instead, I think we have to look at, scale back, look at the needs more than the wants, and some will debate whether it's a need or a want for some of the new buildings. And I think what we're doing is the right thing. I'm in Sherwood every week. That's where my two oldest go. I volunteer every other week in the building. You know, and same thing, kind of thinking about what Julie said about being in Anderson. And I don't really notice things falling down everywhere. I do think Ray's done a great job with his department. Sure, would things like to be spruced up? Yes. But once again, I think we're back to the wants versus needs. I think all of our schools, and I know the most with Sherwood, I think they do amazingly because of the parent support and because of the teachers in that building. Sure, the teachers would like things spruced up if you ask them, but I think we have great schools because of the parent support, because of the teachers, because of the kids. So at this time, I think we need to move forward with the very basic needs that our school district needs, that our kids need, that our teachers need, and move forward with the plans that we're presenting. And the last thing I was going to say is you mentioned, I think your first concern was the speed and the rapid process of this, which I agree moved fast, but I know I toured the schools again back in June, and all of these things were things that Ray and Dallas and I talked about and things that we've been talking about for the past year with especially safety and security and accessibility. We talked a lot about, at Summit being able to get around. So even though the plan itself has only been presented in December, I definitely think the issues and the things that are in the plan have been things that I know I've been discussing for over a year, if not longer, with our administration. So I guess that's where I'm not as concerned about the speed of how we're moving, because they're topics that we've been discussing for years, especially the past year. So,
Randy?
A couple issues. Unfortunately for Forest Hills, trying to compare Forest Hills to other school districts is not really apples to apples because of the way the OSFC evaluate school districts. But no, Julie, I'm not talking about the study. All that's valid. What I'm talking about is our ability to get funding from the state. Rick could probably share better, but we're not going to get the money that some of these other school districts get. I think we're 550th on the list, and even if they got to us, we'd only get, I think it's 15% of the money to build new buildings. We've had a very conservative approach to a permanent improvement over the past 15, 20 years. Maybe most school districts have got some kind of a PI levy that's layered on to their tax structure. We have not had that, and that's been a good thing. I agree, we might have great desires, but no matter what, at the end of the day, we've got to have a plan that is financially supportable by our community. We have to do what's reasonable for them, and they also have to support it with their votes. Julie, you pointed out the long-term look that we've had at facilities. I'm in my 10th year on this board, and I've been attending meetings for 14 years. And the board has really been held captive for the past 14 years over the one high school vision. And we've evaluated that. We've got the data. We know where the community is. The cost of doing that is not practical. And so that decision's been made. And so it is finally time to move forward and make some decisions and invest some money in our facilities. I think that's been a killer for the past 14 years. Anything that didn't lead to a particular vision in our structure ground to a halt. So it's finally time to move forward. And the other thing I would say is this doesn't prevent significant improvements in buildings in out years. That doesn't mean we necessarily assume we're going to replace them, but there may be improvements that could be made in, I don't remember what the scale is on years, but 10, 15 years from now that's economically feasible or viable, so that we don't have the scenario that you pointed out, Julie, that we would have buildings that are extremely old and all of them look that way. Considering where we've come and this plan, It's not the plan we'd all like. Sure, we'd all like 9 new buildings. That'd be wonderful, but we can't get there from here today. We need to take the first step, and I think the first step is supporting this plan.
As we were all taking our turns here.
Marty?
One thing, I've been on the board 3 years, or coming up on 4. I've been around the board for 40-some years, as long as I can remember. The 3 words that come up again and again, especially with facilities, is paralysis by analysis. I've heard that a million times. Now, fortunately, we haven't heard it a lot in our board right now, but I've heard it, I mean, just time after time, year after year. There's always something else or a different way of looking at it, and that will always be the case. And this is the thing that, one of the things that excites me about this is that we are on the verge of actually putting a bond issue before the voters, giving them a chance to determine one way or the other where we want to go. And, waiting, I just see when, because I think I know how you feel about that too, about the frustration of, we get right to the edge and we just never jump in the pool. And it's just, I mean, that was in '04 when that was. There was a committee in '03 and '06, I think in '90s there. I mean, it's been, and it's just, and we, every time the board gets right there and then something happens, whether it's an operating issue. I mean, that's what, when I started here, it was, our first concern was getting an operating issue. The second issue, or second most important thing, was getting an operating issue done. And the third was getting I mean, that's what it was. And it goes, and I just see, November and then May and then and now, now we're starting and it just all of a sudden I see us 5 years, 10 years from now going, man, we were close to put it out there and we just didn't do it then because of, I mean, real issues. Don't get me wrong, these are all, they're real issues, but we're so close. As far as the district of choice, whether my kids come back, I came back to a aging district. You're here. I mean, we've all done that. I see. I mean, the people come to move to Anderson Township for the schools, not for the shiny new schools. If you do that, you move to Adams County. I've been out there. I mean, that's not that we can't. It's for what goes on in the schools, and I see this as, okay, addressing not everything we'd like, but that infrastructure things, the wait, you don't have air conditioning in schools. I even put that, we had talked about it as learning environment, but with the safety issues, I mean, I've been there. If it's 100 degrees in your room, you open up the doors. When someone closes the doors, you open.
Very supportive. Now, I don't think we got into the nitty-gritty of what all the improvements were, but they were very supportive of this, and I think they pointed out, and by the way, there's a mix of people on that advisory committee that are all financially astute, and the cost of money is never going to get cheaper than it is now, and the cost of construction, we're never going to be in a better position to get a competitive bid. So I think that also plays into why we should be doing things now. Rick, could you, if you feel like it, could you share just a little bit more of the thoughts of your Financial Advisory Committee?
Certainly. I think you mentioned it, really. I think they looked at the financial side of the cost of money and what opportunities that money would allow the district to do, looking at a 35-year loan at 3.5%. I mean, those are attractive. You can get a lot of financing opportunities with that. And I think for that, among other reasons, but I think that's what they focused on, is it enough was kind of their questions. And obviously wanting to do something sooner than later. So timing and scope were all important.
Could I briefly, I promise, respond to a couple things? A couple are things that I don't want you to misunderstand me. And I have to tell you, you all know how deeply I care about you, and I think every one of us adds something special to this board. And Dallas is our guy. We hired him for the gifts that he has, and I respect you, Dallas. So I just want to let you know that. I'm not suggesting, this is in relation to what Jim said, I'm not suggesting we replace 3 elementary schools right now. What I'm suggesting is, what concerns me the most about this plan is we are representing to the community that we are extending the useful life of all of our buildings, depending on what we say on a particular day, anywhere from 35 to 50 years. That's what bothers me. We don't have a long-term plan other than we're going to do safety and security and accessibility, which everybody agrees on right now. Some minor other things, air conditioning is a big thing, granted, but then the buildings are going to stay, in my opinion, the way they are for 35 to 50 years. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing us say to the community. So I really do want a long-term plan. I don't want this will be good, this will get us somewhere out there. I want a long-term plan. I've always wanted a long-term plan. Forrest, I get paralysis by analysis, but this is the first conversation we've ever had. I love tonight. Even though I knew I was going to be a lone wolf here, I love that we're talking. We've never talked. We've never done it. And I disagree with Randy, who says that we've stopped every time because of the one high school. That's just not true. I mean, I've said this to my husband at home. Nobody's ever asked me if I think one high school or 2 high schools. Did I look at various configurations in our last facility study? Sure I did. You need to do that to see what's the most cost-effective, what's the best for our kids. The whole committee did. And really good committee, really smart people, really diverse from all over the district. And those committee members were at this, the equivalent of what this meeting is. Invested people. They were very invested. So I disagree that the high school issue stopped us. We stopped. I can't even tell you why exactly, but we did. But it wasn't just because of one high school. And I said in my remarks about where I think we should go that I'm personally fine with the existing building configuration. We heard it loud and clear the last time, existing building configuration, but I think we need to look at that as we move forward for all of our schools. We're going to have Wilson, it's going to be state-of-the-art, and all the other buildings are going to be okay, but no substantial improvements for 35 to 50 years scares me. Randy also said something about we don't get money other districts get because we're way down on the list for state funding. I don't know. Randy probably does. I don't know which districts. I know Adams County was high on the list, but I think there are some districts that went out to their voters and said, this is what we want to do. We want to be excellent. We want to be competitive. And community, we want you to support us. And Forrest, you said we're finally putting something before the voters. We are. But how do you know what they're going to vote for and what they're going to accept if we never ask? How do you know? That's all.
Julie, if I may address just one thing, and you've mentioned several times that what we're putting out, there's a plan that we're going to use these facilities for the next 35 to 40 years or whatever number. Actually, the term is 40-plus years. But what it simply means is that our facilities structures themselves will have a life of that. Doesn't mean that down the road, 10, 12, 15 years, whenever any board at that time takes a look at what may come along at that time, that you address it at that time. What we're saying is that we've done a very nice job of keeping our building envelopes. As you said, some of the example you gave of a building that's 80 years old that looks better than Anderson right now. You know, I've been in buildings like that too. Just renovated a building in my former district that was 103 years old. So I'm not saying down the road, I'm just saying to our community that this is a plan that if we continue to utilize our facilities the way we have been, that they will be with us for a while. It will be up to a board sometime down the road that if something else needs attention or whatever at that time, they can address that. This isn't a plan that we're going to go to our community and say, well, this is the beginning of a plan, but in 6 years, we're going to come back and say, now we need a new other building. The building itself will be sound. If the board were to choose in 6 or 8 or 10 or 15 years to come back and ask our community to do something else, it won't be because the facility itself is ready to fall down. It'll be because the need at that time could be different. When you look at a facilities plan, looking at anything beyond 10 or 15 years, and as a board or us right now saying that, gee, we want a plan that's going to take us out further, we don't know what further is. We don't know how we'll be delivering education in 10, 12, 15, 18, 20 years. So I think that's something that the board, as we move along, as the new board members, and maybe some of you, and the administration and the community at that time is going to have to decide. What this plan simply is it addresses our needs. It brings our buildings to a scale that is comparable with other districts. You mentioned the fact that in Anderson alone, yes, the air conditioning there is a cost factor, but along with that, for interior improvements, we've addressed that at, just lost it, $2.5 million for general finishes within that building. So when you say, the lockers, that the thing, we can address those needs with those $2.5 million of improvements within that building. So I thank you for your time and your effort and everything you've done. I really agree.
I think we have to be really careful how we communicate this useful life argument to the community. It's a very fine point. I mean, it's fine. I'm not even sure I still get it, what you're saying. We have to be very careful. And I want you all to know that I know how this vote's going to come out, and I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. I just had to express my opinion because it's been weighing on me, and I think Tracy, I know, knows it. I mean, I think you all knew it toward the end of the year. I will support whatever we do. All right?
Thank you, Julie.
All right.
Thank you, Julie.
Do we have, so moving to 9, resolution determining the need to proceed with a bond issue on May 7th, 2013.
I move to adopt the resolution to determine to proceed with the bond on the May 7th, 2013, in the amount of $47 million.
All right, second. Any other discussion? Mr. Tepfer.
Mr. Fruman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner.
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger,
No.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
even though legally I cannot vote, I would like the record to reflect that I did support the motion.
So reflected. All right. Next up, we have 9.2, setting time, dates, and places of regular meetings for 2013.
Dr. Heiss, just a point of clarification. This is
Yes.
an item from the organizational meeting. We had a couple of changes. We brought the entire calendar back. It's a February meeting, moving to 4 o'clock, and a different date for the April meeting that was a conflict with, I think, the National School Boards Association. So that's the entire calendar, regular school board meeting.
And to
schedule.
clarify, too, our meeting on, our next month is at 4 p.m., and that is a work session to begin the meeting.
Correct.
And then we'll have our,
Regular meeting should start at 7 o'clock as planned.
as planned, right? Okay, do we have a
So moved.
motion?
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Hubner? Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes. Next up, Student Services. Betsy?
I have, for item 10, I have the administration of Turnbull is asking for your approval for 43 students and non-chaperones to their orchestra travel to New York City, New York, on April 11th to 14th of this year. That's a Thursday to Sunday. The students and chaperones will attend, among many other things, the Broadway show, New York Philharmonic concert, Ellis Island, and multiple museums. fee per student, which includes their lodging, transportation, their tickets, museum admission, and meals. The transportation is being provided by a chartered bus. It is recommended the board approve the overnight field trip by Kirkland High School Fine Arts Department, their orchestra, to New York City, New York, April 11th to 14th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tupper?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Thank you. Next up, curriculum. Connie?
Policy recommendations, late revisions, and not really major, that the policy committee has worked through. Their first reading this month, will be back for approval next month.
Thank you. Item 12, Human Resources. Tammy?
We have a number of items on our human resources report. Item A would be retirement. With regret, Chris Curry, Christina Curry, 40 years with Forest Hill School District. He is the secretary of Anderson High School. James Sedgwick, who was a 23-year employee of the district, a bus driver who was recently had his last day at work on December 31st. So again, with regret, some great employees long-term. Resignation, Missy Boland as school nurse at Anderson. Then we have a resignation of Brian Weaver. Item D is a leave of absence. Item E, a change of assignment for Linda Stanley. Please note that this does supersede the board agenda item from June of 2012. Item F and G would be appointments. Just give you a moment to look at those. Please do note that all of those are replacements with the exception of Sarah Aris, paraprofessional at Mercer. Sarah is being hired or recommended for hire this evening. She is an add in the FTE. This is a federally funded position and is based on significant needs of the students. Item H, we see our additional support items. Community education, I'm on page 3 at this point. Access 24/7. We heard Dee Stone speak a little earlier this evening about everything that the foundation does. This is one of the programs that the foundation supports for the district. Destination Imagination, again, another program supported by the foundation. We certainly appreciate that. District Community Education Coordinator, Ann Haichia. We continue on. We have a number of athletic special assignments. Item I is going on. These are appointments of coaches or consultants, advisors. Item J, we do have a number of subs on our list for your approval this evening. And since the board meeting of December 17th, the staffing in the district has increased by 0.64 to 769.29 FTE. I spoke briefly about the Mercer part-time parapro. The other adjustments in that would be our bus drivers. There are always, very often, adjustments in bus routes, and that is the other 0.265 of that FTE. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the human resources report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tupper?
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Thank you. Business operations, Ray?
Before I get started, I just want to say Anderson Township is adding a sidewalk at the east side of 8 Mile Road in the area of Bear Elementary that would run from Brownsboro Lane to Forest Road. In order for the sidewalk to be constructed on the air property, it would be necessary to grant an easement to the Board of Townships, trustees of Anderson Township. The easement would cover approximately 425 feet. A copy of the easement is attached to the board agenda. It's recommended that the board approve the granting of easement as shown in the attachment.
So moved.
Second. And to note, Ray, this is not costing us, we're not contributing to this, correct?
We provided some form of sidewalk, and they're not been asked, so.
We don't think we're going to be asked?
No.
Okay, good. Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, treasurer?
Yeah, item 14.1. This is a service that the OSBA offers, a legal assistance fund. We use that to supplement our current district legal advice for questions that come up throughout the year. So it's recommended the board adopt a resolution to join the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund for 2013 and direct the treasurer to pay the legal assistance fund fee of $250. Excuse me, $250, yes, correct.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Treasurer's report?
And these items are all listed in 14.2. We have our donations in A, our statement of board accounts in B. All items are in good condition with one negative fund, Fund 590, Title 2A. We have funding request outstanding, and due to that pending funding request, our deficit meets the criteria for that. In item C, we have the summary of general fund receipts. And right about the halfway point, we have 49.65% of our projected revenue received. And item D is our general fund expenditures by function, and 51.82% of our appropriations have been spent at month end. And item E, we show our expenditures by object. And I believe there is where we have, a little bit ahead of spending at this point, and from future years at this point. You can see that in item D. 47.16% of our annual appropriation has been spent at month end, a little less than 1% higher than the 3-year average at this time. In item F, we have our monthly bank reconciliation. G, our list of investments. H, our amendments to the appropriations. No change to our general fund. Item I, we are requesting approval of board service fund expenses. And item J, although we are not a Race to the Top district, Race to the Top funds were available to support the resident educator program for local school districts. So this is the establishment of Fund 506 to facilitate that funding. In item K, we're requesting the permission to close General Fund 001-9194. This was a fund that was set up to track when the state actually supported bus purchases. We had a separate fund to be able to track that. Now it's kind of an accounting nuance that we want to close that since they're not funding buses. It's so we're closing that account. All the reporting is still going to be in the general fund, but it's just a subset of that, and this will allow that to be closed. It's recommended the board approve the treasurer's report as presented.
So moved.
Second?
So on $1.2 million in our fund, we got $70 of interest.
We have some other investments outstanding, but yes, that's
Awesome. All right, Mr. Tepfer?
wow. Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Forest Hills Foundation report.
I attended the Forest Hills Foundation for Education board meeting on January 9th after about a year sabbatical. It really was exciting to be back. They're doing a lot of great things. The organization and the planning is progressed really substantially. It's really neat. They've got 3 big events coming up. On February 23rd is Today for Today's Women. It's not too late to sign up. Dallas.
Be a model.
The alumni basketball game is March 2nd That's at 7 o'clock this year. It's at Turpin, and at halftime, there's going to be a 5th and 6th grade basketball game. The Forest Hills 5K is on May 15th. 18th. I wrote it down wrong. Thank you, Dee. And beyond that, the organization's doing real well. They've retained Smith Beers Junker to consult on some fundraising initiatives, and I know that's moving forward, and sponsorships are up, and everything's going real well.
Great, thank you. Next up, the legislative liaison report. Randy?
I submitted a written report, and it is in the board docs. Just two things. I met with Representative Peter Stoutsburg last week on for our monthly update, and I think the biggest issue that's coming down the pike that certainly will affect our school district is when the budget, the governor releases his budget. I think it's February 4th or February 7th. I've got no hints on what the next school funding formula will look like, but that will be a real important announcement when we see what direction the state plans on taking school funding in the next budget period. Like I said, the written report is there, and hopefully you can access that off of board docs. That's all I have.
Executive session?
This was, remember I emailed you, Jim? Do you remember? Do you need me to tell you?
I remember.
Okay. This is part of your new job duty, so.
Oh, I'm the one that makes the
You do that,
motion.
that's part of being a vice president.
Congratulations.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Move to the motion maker of executive
Wow.
session.
I move that we adjourn to executive session for the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, motion, or compensation of a public employee. Did I do that right?
Yes. Very well.
Second.
Can I get a second? Mr. Tepler?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner? Mrs. Bishinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. So, thank you, everyone, for coming. We do not anticipate any additional measures being taken after the executive session. Our next regular meeting of the Board of Education is February 25th. There will be a work session at 4 o'clock, and our regular meeting will start at 7 o'clock. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
No.
I'm not going to executive.